Welcome into the GoVols247 Podcast. I am Patrick Brown. I'll be hosting this episode. It is not quite a special edition, but it is special in the sense that for the first time in a while, all three of us are here. I am joined by Ben McKee of GoVols247 and also Ryan Callahan of GoVols247. Having some fun here with the sound effects on our StreamYard platform. This is what happens when you guys let me host. But anyways, we have a mailbag edition today. We're going to be answering questions from GoVols247 subscribers that we took on the checkerboard on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. And it will run the gamut from Tennessee football questions, both with looking at the end of the season with Tennessee having 3 regular season games left. Also the offseason, should Josh Heupel make any staff changes? Emphasis on the transfer portal. Where should Tennessee go from there? There's some basketball questions as well that Ben will answer expertly for us. Tennessee is playing North Florida on Wednesday night in the Chaz Lanier. It's the game that was the result of the Chaz Lanier deal. Just kidding, not really, but that's what's happening on Wednesday night at Thomas Bowling Arena. We'll also have some baseball questions, and there are some recruiting questions too for Ryan Callahan, as we are a few weeks away from the early signing period. Ryan,
3 weeks from today.
So yeah, first of all, before we get to the questions, how are each of you doing? Ryan, we booed you, so we'll let you go first.
Yeah, doing okay. It's been a long time since we've watched a football game, I feel like. So ready to get back into the swing of things Saturday.
Yeah, we watched a handful of games on Saturday. I did not enjoy watching LSU attempt to play offense. That was pretty miserable. So
I didn't get to watch as much as I would like, thanks to YouTube TV, but there's that.
Yeah, that's true. So Ben, are you a YouTube TV guy? Are you struggling like all of us are?
I am. I'm frustrated, but I'm not struggling as much as most are because I just use my parents' DirecTV login to get on watch ESPN. So I've been able to watch the games, but the ESPN app is just miserable to deal with. The quality of the actual video is horrendous. The app logs you out. It kicks you out back to the main screen time and time again. It's just a horrendous experience. So I am one I do not immediately complain about things when stuff like this happens, but I've reached the point now to where I am beginning to really get fed up, and it's taking everything in me not to join the rest of social media and tweeting about it. But I am frustrated because I just wish I could navigate the games. I'm still watching the games, but I wish I could navigate it like I typically do because it is 10,000 times easier than this stupid ESPN app.
Yeah, the other thing is I got used to watching YouTube TV's multi-view. So you're watching 4 games at once, and this was like the first season you could pick them. And so it was a struggle on Tuesday night for me. I'm going back and forth between Maction and it was Ohio Western Michigan. I'm getting to that point of the college football season where I'm like, shoot, there's only 3 weeks left. I got to watch all I can before I don't have it to watch anymore. And just going back and forth on the ESPN app was really clunky as opposed to YouTube TV, where I could have just had them side by side. Both those games went down to the wire. But yeah, Ben, I'm like you. I'm using a DirecTV login from a family member. So shout out to that family member who's going to remain nameless because I'm not outing myself here on this podcast. But with all that said and done, let's get to the questions. And I think a great first question here from Nick 1. He wants us to predict our record in these last 3 games of the season. Tennessee plays New Mexico State on Saturday at home. Then it is 2 SEC rivalry games at Florida and at home against Vanderbilt. Ryan, we'll start with you. 3-0, 2-1, 1-2. What is your record prediction for Tennessee's final 3 games?
I will go on the record and say I don't think Tennessee's losing at the Swamp this time. I know the history there and everything, but I think Tennessee wins that game. So this basically for me comes down to whether the Vols can beat Vanderbilt, and I'm very torn on that right now. I'm gonna lean toward no right now, just because I think this team is flawed enough and Vanderbilt is good enough to win that game even on the road. So right now, I'll say they go 2-1 down the stretch.
Unfortunately, I totally agree with Mr. Callahan. I think they go 2-1 down the stretch. I think they win in the Swamp. This Florida team is just abysmal, and like Callahan said, I'm very aware of the past and the history. If you can't beat this Florida team in the Swamp, then Tennessee should file some waiver to never play again, or at least the SEC should just automatically give the win to Florida from here on out if it's ever played in the Swamp. Because if you can't beat this Florida team in the Swamp, then which Florida team are you going to be able to beat in the Swamp? And I know all the jokes and agree with all the jokes. I'm sure they'll look like the 08 Florida football team somehow when Tennessee gets down there next weekend. But just putting the history aside, Tennessee's a better football team. Florida's terrible. Is Florida even going to get up for the game? I would think that they at least get up and play with more effort than they did against Kentucky. But I think that's a game that Tennessee should absolutely win. And then I just don't have a lot of confidence in the matchup against Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt is a better football team. I think they do a lot of things well. I think they're more disciplined. I think they're more physical. I think they certainly have a better defense. And I think Tennessee's flaws, I think Vanderbilt is going to be able to take advantage of that. So I know it's in Neyland. I know it's senior day. I know folks don't like hearing that Tennessee is going to lose to Vandy, but I'm thinking along the same lines of Callahan. I just think Vanderbilt's a better football team than Tennessee, unfortunately for Tennessee fans, and I think Tennessee goes 2-1 down the stretch as a result.
Yeah, I said on our no huddle last week during the bye week, Ben, that I thought it would either be 9-3 or 7-5 with no in between, but I think there will be an in between. And I'm going to go 2-1. I'm going to go different. I'm not going to pick them to win at Florida just out of principle. Florida's been in close to as bad of a state as it is now before, and it hasn't mattered. Tennessee goes down there and plays bad. So I'm kind of in I got to see it to believe it mode on that one. So I will go with Tennessee losing to Florida because that's what it always does. And I think Tennessee will beat Vanderbilt because I think Vanderbilt is fading a little bit. Honestly, you look at their last 4 games. They beat LSU at home by a touchdown. LSU's not very good. They beat Missouri at home by a touchdown. Missouri finished that game, played most of that game with their third-string freshman quarterback. Vanderbilt needed a touchdown late. Missouri missed some scoring opportunities early in that game. Vanderbilt almost came back and beat Texas, but it was 34-10 in the fourth quarter, so that was a mismatch. And then Vanderbilt was fortunate to beat Auburn in overtime, an Auburn team that couldn't score a touchdown against Kentucky, who just got torched by Tennessee, went up and down the field on Vanderbilt, and they only got out of that game because of Diego Pavia. So, and I also think first of all, is Vanderbilt going to beat Kentucky in 2 weeks? Kentucky's won 2 games. They seem to be on the upswing a little bit. And if Vanderbilt goes into that game with a college football playoff spot on the line, I just can see Vanderbilt getting way too up for that game and playing out of character. Whereas Tennessee, I think Tennessee they'll play the audio of Pavia running his mouth on the Netflix show and on podcasts this summer. And regardless of what state your season is in, I think that's a game Tennessee can get up for. So, and I think Tennessee fans would take that trade. They're probably numb to losing at Florida at this point. And I think they would probably trade another one there to not have to watch Vanderbilt celebrate potentially a college football playoff berth on its own field.
I will say this. I do think there's something to what you're saying about Pavia, and I've kind of felt that way all offseason, that Tennessee would be very motivated to win that game and to beat Pavia. And obviously keeping them out of the playoff is pretty good motivation for that game as well. But I'm this close to saying they go 3-0. I think Florida's quit. I just will be shocked if they lose that game at the Swamp. But I was also surprised they lost to Oklahoma at home, frankly, because I think that's a pretty soft loss. I think Oklahoma's an okay team, but I don't think we're going to look back at that game and say, that makes sense. I think Oklahoma's going to lose at least 1 more, if not 2 more games down the stretch. So I think we'll look back at that one as one Tennessee shouldn't have lost at home, especially in that atmosphere at night. And then, again, I'll be surprised if they lose to this Florida team. But, the Vanderbilt game, I'm very much up in the air. So ask me again next week, and I might say, that Tennessee wins both of those games.
To Ben's point, I was watching the Vanderbilt-Auburn game on Saturday and was like, I don't know how Tennessee's going to stop this guy. So that'll be obviously a big question going into that game. Next question is a basketball question, so we're going to kick it to you, Ben. This is from Old School Vol, who wants to know, who do you think will be the starting 5 for the basketballs when we hit the start of the SEC schedule on January 3rd?
And before I answer that, I will say, Nick, I saw your other question, and I will relay the message that is constantly a work in progress. But by the time
Nick,
SEC
he told me to skip it, so don't blame Ben, not me.
Well, I mean, it wasn't an actual question. It was more just having fun.
Blame Callahan just out of principle.
I've already picked on Callahan enough on our most recent podcast, so I'm leaving that up to Patrick today. I also don't want Callahan to assign me any more homework. But I will say that the starting lineup by the time SEC play rolls around, I think I'm hesitating because I'm trying to decide whether I think this is what I would like for it to be or what I think Rick Barnes will actually do. I think the lineup with the highest ceiling, we know Jacoby Gillespie, Nate Ament, and Felix Akpara are 3 of your 5 starters. So it boils down to who is starting at the 2, who is starting at the 4. My personal opinion is that the highest ceiling is with Ethan Berg at the 2 because I think he can provide more of an offensive punch than Bishop Boswell, but Bishop is going to provide more of a defensive punch, and we know what Rick is going to prefer if it boils down to, all right, which one provides more of a punch of which. So I'm not sure. I'll say Bishop is starting 2 by then, still the starting 2 by then, just because Ethan's still learning Rick's system, learning the American game after he got here late in September. And that's only about a month and a half away. So I'll give the nod to Bishop at the 2, but I do think that long term, even past the start of SEC play, I think the highest ceiling is with Berg at the 2 because of that provided offensive punch. And then at the 4, I'll go bold. Maybe it's not that bold, but JP Estrella starting next to Felix Akpara over Jalen Carey and Cade Phillips. And that has kind of been one of my talking points this week is a lot of people are spending time on Bishop Boswell starting at the 2 and why he shouldn't and questioning that decision. I think the more intriguing conversation with the starting lineup is the 4 spot. And I think JP, because of the offensive punch he can provide and possibly be the third scorer on this team, which they need, I think that's the more intriguing question with the lineup or more intriguing conversation. So I think JP Estrella is your starting 4 by the time SEC play rolls around. But I could also see Rick kind of going game to game with that spot. I mean, he started Cade Phillips this past Saturday against Northern Kentucky because they felt like they needed his ability to extend the floor defensively and also potentially be able to knock down perimeter shots. And that's why Phillips started over Carey. So I could also see him going game by game and just being matchup dependent and personnel dependent. But again, just my simple thought of what's the lineup with the highest ceiling. I think it's with Ethan Berg and JP Estrella in it.
Next up is Woody12. He's got 3 football-related questions looking ahead to 2026. We'll start off with this one. Positions to prioritize in the portal. Before I kick it to Ryan, I will say the secondary and in particular safety and star. Those would be the starting points for me for Tennessee.
I agree. I think the defensive line is probably one that I would include in close to the same category. I think it's definitely the start at safety. I think they've got to find a replacement for Andre Turrentine. I don't think you're expecting any of those freshman safeties to come in and step into the starting lineup right away. I don't think you have a ready-made replacement in the pipeline right now. So got to go get a starter there. And then, something at the star position, probably whether it's a guy who can play part-time there or whatever, would make some sense as well. I wouldn't rule out an addition at cornerback because you may lose Jermod McCoy and Colton Hood. So how ready is someone else to step into the starting lineup there along with Ricky Gibson? Do you want to play Gibson and Ty Redmond again, or do you want to upgrade there? That would be an interesting discussion. But I think at the very least you might need a guy who can be one of your top 3 cornerbacks next year. So I think multiple additions in the secondary, and then something on the defensive line somewhere. Whether it's they're losing 2 defensive ends, you're losing Dominic Bailey, Tyree West. You got to probably replace one of those guys. Probably a defensive tackle as well, losing Jackson Moy and and Bryson Easton that played a lot of football for Tennessee. So probably those 2 positions stand out the most. And then from there, to me, it just depends on who else leaves. Does Lance Hurd go pro? That's an interesting discussion. If they do, are they ready to hand over one of those tackle positions to Bennett Warren? Do they keep Jesse Perry at tackle next year, or move him back to right tackle, or however you want to look at that? Some things on the offensive line that maybe could dictate an addition at guard. And then beyond that, again, does someone else get talked into the portal? I think they'll probably lose somebody unexpected somewhere, but where that's going to be, who knows? So it could be anywhere from wide receiver to linebacker, and nothing would shock me. So Does one of Tennessee's better players get talked into the portal? And if so, you maybe have to go find a replacement there. But dark horse, fans will love to hear this, quarterback. I don't think they're going to go get a starter, but I think you might be forced to get at least a scholarship quarterback of some sort. So I don't think it's as big of a need, but if Jake Merklinger leaves, I think you got to go try to find at least a quarterback who can maybe, compete, someone who can push a George McIntyre and a Faison Brandon, but you got to find a third scholarship quarterback if at all possible.
Good luck.
Won't be easy.
I think it'll have to be. I think it'll have to be a Trinidad Chambliss type.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
somebody that's at a D2, a D3, a JUCO, somebody that you're given an opportunity to. That his opportunities are limited.
FCS guy, maybe. Yeah, that's kind of along the lines I was thinking. Someone that you're not promising him anything, but a chance to compete. And if he can actually beat out, a George McIntyre for the starting job, hey, congrats. But yeah,
and it's somebody that that doesn't concern George either. George feels like, oh, I can beat out this guy. Faison feels I can beat out this guy.
Well, the good thing for Tennessee is, and all schools in this thing with just one transfer portal window, is that window applies to only when players can enter the portal. You can add players after the portal is closed. So players are now going to have no recourse. If you add a player 3 days after the portal closes, you're stuck unless a coach leaves. So that I think you're going to have the ability to add a player that even if it rocks the boat with a player like that, too late. You can't do anything about it. So and Tennessee starts classes later than a lot of schools in January, so that works in their favor too. So I think they'll be fine there. But yeah, to that point, you've got to, if Merklinger leaves, I think you got to do everything you can to bring in a third quarterback.
Woody 12's second question is about scheme adjustments for next year. We have a question about some coaching staff changes, things like that. So we will sort of get to that later. Woody 12's final question is players that will level up next year on the current roster. Let's keep it brief and pick one on each side of the ball. I'll start. I think George McIntyre's got to level up. If they're going to not go get a proven sitting starting quarterback or somebody with experience, that's a big opportunity for you, and you got to take advantage of it. So I think that's a pretty obvious one that needs to level up on offense. And on defense, can I pick Edwin Spillman? I mean, he's already kind of leveling up. I just really like what I've seen from him the last couple of games since he's been starting for Arion Carter. I think he's also kind of maybe got the makeup to be maybe that alpha, that heart and soul, that leader in the middle of your defense. So, and especially if Arion does go to the NFL, that opens a spot for him to take on a bigger role. So I'll start there. We'll go Ben first this time. Who are a couple guys you want to see level up on this roster for next season?
I think Ethan Davis will level up to Woody's question, and Tennessee needs him to as well. Or maybe they don't need him to because you have theoretically two options behind him as long as the portal doesn't strike with Desan Brame and Jack Van Dorselaer, who I know everybody is high on. But we've always talked about Ethan Davis's ceiling and potential since the moment he stepped foot on campus, and next year is going to be his year. And we know how important the tight end position is. So I think Ethan Davis will level up, and I feel more confident about that based off of how he has played the last couple of weeks since he returned from injury. I think you could make the case that he's been better than Miles Kitselman the last couple of weeks, at least in the passing game. Defensively, I like the Edwin Spillman one. I really like that one. That would probably be my pick. To be different, Ty Redmond, and I think he falls into the category of Tennessee needs him to level up as well. We talked on our No Huddle this week about Josh Heupel's comments that behind the scenes they saw how Braylon Staley was developing during his true freshman season, how Mike Matthews was getting better throughout his true freshman season, and they felt good about where those guys were going to be as sophomores or in their second year in the program, and that helped them make the decision to not go get a portal receiver. I'll be curious to see if they have that same approach with Ty Redmond from an ability standpoint. Maybe they still go get a corner because they need one from a bodies perspective. They just need more numbers. But I can see Ty Redmond taking a really big step next season, and I think that'd be huge for this Tennessee football team, just based off of what they are set to lose at corner, it appears. But the last thing I'll say, Ryan, is to Patrick's point about McIntyre, just in terms of that Braylon Staley, Mike Matthews mold of needing somebody to level up. That is the most obvious answer of all time of who absolutely needs to level up on this football team. It's George McIntyre.
No question. That'll be where things kind of start and end with this team next year, because he's going to be, at least the early favorite to start at quarterback next year, even with Faison Brandon coming in. So he's got to take advantage of that year of experience he will have in the system that will give him maybe a built-in advantage over a true freshman in Brandon. But yeah, I'll say on offense, I'm going to go with DeJuan Morris. I think he's a guy that's going to have to play some next year, and I think could even play a little bit bigger role than people might envision. Not just the third back there, maybe, but maybe someone who could play a pretty significant role. So I think especially given there's at least a chance Tennessee doesn't sign a class of 2026 running back, you've definitely got to have a guy like DeJuan Morris step in there, and you'll have Star Thomas obviously leaving. We'll see if, as long as everyone else stays put, you should have Deshaun Bishop and Peyton Lewis back. So that third guy, we know Tennessee likes to play three ideally. Morris seems kind of ready-made to step into a bigger role next year. If not here down the stretch, we'll see if he gets a little more playing time here in these final few games. On defense, I think several candidates here. I toyed with a couple guys on the defensive line. I'll go Jordan Ross just because I think he's maybe a more natural choice, a guy who kind of has to level up next year. I think with Joshua Joseph being gone, I think Caleb Herring will be fine. He'll continue to do what he's started to do this year. But Ross is that guy. We saw a couple games where he's had flashes of it. I think he probably starts to put it together more consistently next year and become the type of player they thought he could be, obviously coming out of high school when he was a 5-star.
Yeah, I to Ryan's point, if DeJuan Morris is not returning punts on Saturday, I don't know what's going on there. Woody 12 got another question in. This is the Woody 12 segment of this podcast, but he wants to know our favorite Thanksgiving and Christmas foods and traditions. I will say that Thanksgiving, you got to have turkey, obviously. And my wife makes really good mashed potatoes, so that's a must for me on my Thanksgiving plate. Pumpkin pie, obviously, is one for me too. Christmas traditions, I've really enjoyed, obviously, getting to be a dad on Christmas morning. That's pretty tough to beat. So that's where I'd start on that one.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, it's all about the turkey for me. I'm not as big on every single traditional side and everything with Thanksgiving, but the turkey's a must. And pecan pie for me is a go-to for that one. Not pumpkin. I don't roll with pumpkin. And then Christmas. That one tends to be more ham, but we've had some different stuff on Christmas, so no particular. That a little bit less tradition probably with Christmas. We've done some different stuff for that one. And then like you said, just Christmas morning. That's obviously the star of the show. Just the excitement, seeing the kids run downstairs to see what's under the tree. That's a lot of fun. So that all that stuff throughout that morning is just that's the best part of the day for sure.
I like turkey. Turkey is always on my plate for Thanksgiving, but my Thanksgiving hot take, and I don't even think it's that much of a hot take, is that ham is far superior to turkey.
Depends on how it's cooked. To your point, it's got to be well done.
Yeah, I like the more flavoring that ham provides than turkey, but I have both on my plate. I do not discriminate. I'm a thick boy. Give me all the ham, turkey, whatever. But my favorite part of my Thanksgiving meal is the sides for sure. I love corn, sweet potato casserole. Dressing is my absolute favorite, and I love to get a spoonful of corn, dressing, sweet potato casserole all on one scoop, and just my mouth is bursting with flavors there with that. So I'm a foodie, so Thanksgiving's big for me in that regard. But it's just being around family is the best, and the older you get and just the more life throws at you, the more you appreciate being able to spend time with family on Thanksgiving. And then Christmas for me, just kind of going off that same thought. Like I just absolutely love going to church on Christmas Eve for the Christmas Eve service. That's big in my family. And growing up, my dad always did steaks. So that was a family tradition for us and one that I've carried over into my family. And like Callahan said, now that my boys are starting to get a little older and starting to understand the concept of Christmas, it's fun to to see them get going in that regard. My wife does some things for breakfast as well, casserole. So we are very much a tradition-rich family over here. One for me on Christmas is I always watch Christmas Vacation the night before on Christmas Eve. That's my favorite Christmas movie. It might be my favorite movie regardless of whether it's Christmas or not, but Christmas Vacation with the GOAT Clark Griswold is a must every Christmas Eve for me.
We'll have another holiday-related question coming up here soon, I believe. But back to sports. Virtual Vol, two-parter. Predict how key coaching carousel positions of your interest play out and how Josh Elander's first year goes. We'll start with the coaching carousel. I think the big question is, what is Lane Kiffin doing? Because I think he's probably at the top of multiple wish lists. And what is he going to do? Is he going to go to Florida? Is he going to go to LSU? Is he going to stay at Ole Miss, where he's a couple of very winnable games away from the college football playoff, if not getting to the SEC championship game? Is anyone or all these big names at LSU supposedly going to go after going to be scared away from the fact that thing looks like a huge mess right now with the governor involved and Brian Kelly? They're trying to squeeze Brian Kelly out of his $50-something million buyout. Like, does that much of a mess seem? I mean, if you were in a comfortable position, I'd be taking a hard look at to joining that one. But I think the big question is, where does Lane Kiffin go? And I think that's probably going to be the first kind of domino, because I think he seems to be the white whale that all these some of these high profile jobs are going for.
Yeah, I agree. It all starts with that. I'm fascinated by what James Franklin might end up doing. It seems like he's holding out for something better than Virginia Tech. Like you said, there's going to be somebody that jumps to that LSU job or the Florida job or both, that sort of sets off a string of dominoes is going to fall from there. And does James Franklin end up somewhere does he go to a place like Ole Miss? If Lane Kiffin leaves, somewhere like that. I think there's going to be another job that opens up, even if he doesn't get somewhere like LSU or Florida. So that's one that I will be fascinated. He could always sit out a year, I suppose, but I would think he's going to have an option to go somewhere pretty good, but just maybe not quite at the level he was at with Penn State. So I'll be fascinated by that one. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a great feel for who's going to end up in each of these spots right now, because like you said, it does seem to hinge a little bit on what Lane Kiffin's going to do. I mean, I've seen people throw out that Lincoln Riley at USC could be in play for one of these jobs. I mean, there's been all sorts of names thrown out there. So I think we're going to be surprised by something that comes a little bit out of left field for one of these major openings. But I just don't know where it's going to go. There could be an NFL coach that gets hired. I mean, who knows what's going to happen exactly with all these openings? But it's going to be wild with all the jobs that are open. There's just too many quality jobs out there, and some of them is going to attract maybe a John Gruden, whoever. There's going to be some big names out there that end up being part of this coaching carousel cycle.
I think there's already been some groomers, right?
Yep.
From Arkansas.
Yep. It's out there.
Ben, give us your coaching carousel thoughts, or just skip straight forward to how you think Josh Elander's first season is going to go.
I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're hoping Lane Kiffin somehow manages to get a NFL job, or not San Francisco Giants, but the New York Giants pulls a Tony Vitello.
There.
Yeah, that's right. Because that would hurt all of these SEC teams that are needing a head coach. So that's the obvious answer, is just, okay, what is Lane going to do? From the outside looking in, my personal opinion is that he should stay where he is at, because I think the personal happiness, I think that outweighs all these other pros and cons that are being talked about in the media. I think he can win a championship at Ole Miss. Is it easier at LSU or Florida? Sure. I think it's easier at Auburn. But I think in today's day and age of the portal and NIL, and I think Ole Miss has enough resources to where Lane's a good enough football coach to where he could go win a championship at Ole Miss. So if I were him, my advice that he doesn't care about would be to prioritize his happiness, because that is something that cannot be bought. Not to be cliche, but life is short, and not every situation you work in is gonna be healthy for you. And he is as healthy as he has ever been, mentally and physically. He's talked about that openly. So that would be my advice to him. But there just doesn't seem to be a lot of great candidates. So just with so many intriguing job openings, I'm just very curious to see how they're all filled out. Of course, LSU and Florida in Auburn are attractive, but they're all they all can be toxic, messy situations.
Right.
So somebody's going to sign up for it. I'm curious to see who is going to sign up for those jobs. Because again, especially like you look at LSU and how sloppy everything has been down there, I'd be nervous, even if it is LSU and arguably top 2, top 3 job in the country. I'd be nervous to walk into that situation with how dysfunctional they are. Josh Elander's first season will not be dysfunctional. I think Josh Elander will have a tremendous amount of success. It's just a matter of how much they have enough talent on the roster to go to Omaha. They have enough talent on the roster to go win a national championship again. It's just going to be a matter of how the pieces come together. I think the pitching staff is going to be the strength of the team. There's going to be a lot of talent in the lineup, but it's a lineup where guys are going to need to take that next step if they are going to live up to the expectations that we've come to know for a Tennessee baseball offense. You know what you're going to get in Blaine Brown, the Rice transfer. You know what you're going to get from Henry Ford, the Virginia transfer. Levi Clark is probably going to have a big year. But that sophomore class of Levi Clark, Manny Marin, Jay Abernathy, Chris Newstrom, I'll throw Stone Lawless in there, even though he's a year older. He's a redshirt sophomore. That group that I just mentioned, we talk about which football players need to elevate. Those are the hitters in Tennessee's lineup that needs to elevate. And that group, if they can take that next step and live up to their potential as they take the next step in their career, then that's going to dictate just how successful the offense is in the spring.
Back into it here on this GoVols247 Mailbag Podcast. MRO 66391, easy for me to say, wants to know, is the recent regression in the running game at all related to the increased snaps for David Sanders? Seems like the O-line was operating better with Jesse Perry at right tackle. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the run game, which may not get to 2,500 yards for the first time under Josh Heupel?
Yeah, it's going to take some work to get there, it looks like. I think it's at least partly related to that. I think David Sanders is playing pretty well, but that doesn't mean that it's been completely seamless to make that kind of transition because, again, we talked about this early in the season. You're moving multiple guys to make room for him in the lineup, and they move multiple guys to account for his absence at the start of the season. It seemed to me like, especially given that you've played Wendell Moy at right guard now, you could have just kept him on one side instead of bouncing him back and forth depending on who's in the lineup. That would have been the easier thing probably to just make, or he's played at left guard now, I should say, that you could just play Sham Umarov at right guard or whatever and make it work, and not move so many guys around, and that may have made for a more seamless transition when Sanders got back in there. But yeah, it seems like that's at least part of it. But I don't think that's all of it. I think Tennessee's offensive line has been exposed as being maybe a little bit less dominant than we thought they were. Not that I thought they were a dominant line, but I thought they were pretty good early in the season. And now I think that they've been exposed as maybe a little closer to average. They've just not gotten a lot of push in the run game, and they've had a hard time running it effectively against most SEC teams they've played so far, not just Oklahoma. So I think that is that's a concern, especially since I see this as Tennessee's probably most talented offensive line they've had under Josh Heupel. And for this group to not be better and to be the first group that might not have 2,500 rushing yards is a little bit alarming to me. I also wonder if a contributing factor might be, maybe not a big part of it, but a little bit, the changes we've seen in Tennessee's offense, because you're no longer making defenses line up sideline to sideline. You're bringing a lot more defenders closer to the box when you're having these bunch sets and stuff like that. I wonder if that's affected the run game a little bit, because it's a little bit easier for corners and nickels and things like that to help in run support, and you don't have as much room to operate sometimes.
CCT Vol, it also makes a big difference not having Dylan Sampson in the backfield. So
yes,
he was obviously a very good player. Not that any of the running backs have been bad, but big shoes to fill. CCT Vol wants to know, if Tennessee wins out, how will this regular season be remembered? Will it be triumphant for a late arriving quarterback, or will it be the season of what should have been? Ben, what do you think?
I think it should be celebrated, not in the sense of throwing a parade or anything like that, but fans should feel good about it because of the first sentiment that was expressed. It's a late arriving quarterback after the Nico drama who went on to win 9 games. And were there frustrating moments along the way? Absolutely. But if they were to go 9-3, that means you won in the swamp for the first time since 2001, 3?
3.
I mean, we're just going to scoff at that. I don't care how bad Florida is. I mean, that is not something that should be scoffed at. And then I know folks have a hard time readjusting their thoughts on Vanderbilt, but I do think Vanderbilt's a better football team, and Tennessee fans will greatly enjoy shutting Diego Pavia up, ruining the end to his career at Vanderbilt, spoiling Diego's season, and then spoiling Vanderbilt's season, who is an in-state rival, whether folks want to look at them or not. Both sides hate each other. That to me is a rivalry game, and you'd be spoiling their season and preventing them from going to the playoffs. And that's assuming what? They beat Kentucky this week? Is that who they play?
I think it's next week. They're off this week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they have another – yes, because I saw Diego was at the beach with Theo Vaughn. But, yes. Who knows? Maybe everybody's making Cutter Boley look like Tim Couch here in the second half of the season. Maybe Tim Boley can spoil Vandy's season before Tennessee gets the opportunity to. But just given the hectic nature of the offseason, like that is not a season that should be frowned upon if you go 9-3 and you end the season with those type of wins. Again, let's not throw a parade. Off-season adjustments need to be made. Things need to be questioned. Playoffs are the expectations here. Winning in the playoffs is the expectations here. But I don't think you should have sour feelings towards the season if they go 9-3 and end it that way. And I don't think, given the nature of the offseason and given the nature of Joey's situation and how late he got here, I just don't think that you should look at that season as what could have been. Because I would say that if you go 9-3 after the offseason, then in July, August, we're talking about that as being a pretty dang good season given the circumstances of the offseason.
Cutter Couch is the better name for the Kentucky quarterback.
That's true.
Tim Boley sounds like he'd start for the Titans. Well,
that would mean that Tim Boley is a bad quarterback, and that's not the case.
You made some great points just on how the season would finish. I think Tennessee fans would be feeling pretty good if they, like you said, won in the swamp for the first time in 2 decades and ruined Vanderbilt's season. I will say this, though. There will always be the what if for me and probably for everyone about that kick against Georgia, because that game is so early. You win that game, that's a breakthrough win for your program. That's not to say that they would have gone and made the playoff, but I mean that game was right there to be won. It felt in the moment like the 22 Alabama game, like it was a inflection point for the program, and you missed the opportunity. So and so that's going to always be the what if for me.
Ben, you make some good points, and that's maybe how the season should be remembered, but you're being way too reasonable. That is not how the season will be remembered at all. If Tennessee goes 9-3, it absolutely will be remembered as the season of what could have been and wasn't, because to your point, Patrick, they were a field goal away in the final seconds from beating Georgia for the first time in 9 years, and they were also pretty close to beating Oklahoma. And you could argue they could have gone. If Joey Aguilar doesn't throw 2 awful-looking interceptions, you could argue this team could have been 11-1 if you win these last 3 games. So I think fans are absolutely going to look at it that way, but that beats the alternative, which is if this thing goes 8-4 or 7-5 down the stretch, it's viewed as a complete disaster in some ways, a season that makes people question where this thing is headed in the coming years and causes much more uncertainty than anyone ever expected to have coming out of this season. So that's the best case scenario is it's a season of what ifs. So I think that's how it's going to be remembered by fans, because the unfortunate that they're a product of their own success. The unfortunate reality is everyone came into the season with all these questions about the offense. Turned out the offense was plenty good enough, at least on the whole, the numbers week to week in the SEC, maybe not so much, but this offense has put up plenty of points And I think most people are going to look at it and say, if you just had a respectable defense, not even a top 10 defense again, this team could have been really good and had a chance to go somewhere, and you didn't. And even with that, even with the bad defense, you were so close to beating Georgia and Oklahoma, and you didn't. So I think it's going to be more about the what ifs. But again, that beats the alternative of going 8-4 or 7-5.
Do either of you play chess? I don't think either of you as chess players.
Not very well.
There's a chess question from CCT Vol, but I'm going to need to explain, or otherwise I might sound like an idiot. Back to the holiday questions. Law Vol Reb wants to know, when should Christmas decorations be put up? It is a hard and fast rule in this house that there is not a single Christmas decoration up until after Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is a great holiday and it does not need to be overlooked between Halloween and Christmas. So Black Friday, we've usually taken the Saturday of the SEC championship game to go put our tree up. We shifted though from a fake tree to from a real tree to a fake tree a few years ago. I finally won that battle. After the first several years of my marriage, we had to go buy a tree and bring it in, and it did, all that fun stuff. So no Christmas decorations in my house until after Thanksgiving, because I like Thanksgiving, so I want to give it its honor.
I'm going to be a little bit of a hypocrite here and say I agree with you, because I think they should go up right after Thanksgiving. But we have a few up right now at my house that were not my choice, so I'm
typical.
Yeah, that's how it goes, right? But yeah, that's my personal stance.
Yes, I am on the same page as Patrick here. I do not. I do think my wife reluctantly agrees with me. She just with Christmas music and putting up decorations, I'm not for it until the day after Thanksgiving, because I do not want to overlook Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is an amazing holiday. Mm-hmm. In some ways, I enjoy Thanksgiving more than I enjoy Christmas.
I'm with you.
And maybe that's just because I'm a foodie and I eat too much food. But
you know what it is? Christmas comes with all the anxiety of what to get for gifts and all that stuff. You got to do all the shopping.
Thanksgiving's simple. We get to eat great food. We don't have to deal with what you're saying, and we get to watch football.
Yeah.
For me, there's great college basketball on throughout the week as well, in addition to the football. So I'm with you there. But we typically, since I'm usually covering the Tennessee Vanderbilt game that Saturday after Thanksgiving, we typically start to break out our Christmas stuff like that Sunday or Monday, that week after Thanksgiving. And I think the one that I put my foot down with more is the Christmas music. I can deal with the decorations. It's my preference to wait until after Thanksgiving, but I cannot at all do Christmas music before Thanksgiving. Like that, there's only 1 month out of the year that I can do Christmas music, and I love Christmas music, but I can only do it for 1 month, especially when you have a 3.5-year-old and he's just asking for the same song over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Like, nah, bro, we got to wait till December before we break out the Christmas music. I'll end on a positive, though. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is the best Christmas song. My favorite Christmas song. What is y'all's favorite Christmas song?
Oh, man. I got to think about that one for a minute. You got one off the top of your head, Patrick?
No, I don't.
Are you not a Christmas music guy, Patrick?
No, I am. And I say this. I say I deliver my staunch opposition to anything Christmas before Thanksgiving. We have watched Home Alone a few times already in this house. My 4-year-olds are old enough to enjoy physical comedy of Harry and Marv just getting the hell beat out of them, trying to break into the house.
You're going to see them here soon try to pull off the stunts that they try to pull off.
They actually have taken some of the 350-ish roughly Hot Wheels that we have, put them on the floor, and then like, hey, Dad, walk over here, trying to get me to fall like they do. But Law of All Reb had another question, a baseball question. What do you think the weekend rotation will be for the Fighting Elanders, as he calls them?
I think it will be Landon Mack. Landon Mack, Brandon Arvidsson, and Evan Blanco. And I do not at all like leaving Tegan Kuhns out. But somebody's got to go. I really don't know what's going to happen there because you can make the case for all 4 of those guys to be the Friday night guy. I think they're going to give Arvidsson an opportunity to start. Mack is going to start. I don't know. Maybe Blanco they want to use out of the bullpen as a Swiss Army knife, and then Teagan starts. But honestly, it's those 4 guys that are in contention for it, and I may be leaving off another guy by mistake, but I think it's those 4 guys and then how they perform in the scrimmages when they come back from Christmas leading up to the season opener, which I believe is February 13th, if I'm not mistaken. It's 13th, 14th, middle of the month. How they perform in those scrimmages will determine the starting rotation. But I think Tennessee has 4 great options. And like I said earlier, I think the pitching staff is going to be the strength of this team.
Rob Montg wants to know, we'll let Ryan answer this one. What is your level of trust that this team could go beat a bad Florida team in the swamp? On a scale of 1 to 10, mine is a 0.5. So, Ryan, what's yours?
Mine's at least an 8. I just don't. I think Florida's packed it in. Interim coaching staff, not a great team to begin with. Got some injuries, some guys sitting out now. That's if Tennessee, as we said earlier, if Tennessee can't beat this Florida team, you got to wonder when are the Vols going to win at the Swamp. And on top of that, the Swamp will not be the Swamp because I bet there are at least 15,000 empty seats for this game. I don't think Tennessee fans are going to travel in big numbers. Florida fans aren't going to show up like they usually do. This will be the least intimidating version of the Swamp probably that you've seen in a number of years when Tennessee goes there.
We're going to skip ahead on the thread here a little bit. We'll circle back to a question here, but SN Bodie 22 wants to know, Ryan, do we finish with the top 10 recruiting class, maybe top 7? What do you say?
I'll say they finish top 10. I won't say top 7. There's going to be some movement around Tennessee. It's hard to say exactly, how rankings updates will still impact things down the stretch. For instance, Tennessee's got some guys like Tyreek King, who are 3 stars who could still end up being 4 stars. We haven't made many in-season rankings moves with some of our guys. Luka Wolf is a lower-rated guy that I think could still move up for Tennessee. And then other schools have players in their classes that could move up too. So we'll see how that impacts things. I think there's a good chance they finish in the top 10, but top 7 might be asking a bit much unless Tennessee, really hits on a few big-time targets here down the stretch. So we'll see, but they'd have some work to do, I think, to end up in the top 7.
Back to you, Ryan. On Carl82 wants to know. It just says Jermod McCoy with 3 question marks. So I don't know. You can answer it however you see fit. Whether he's going pro, whether he's playing this week, what he had for breakfast. You can.
Will we see Jermod McCoy this football season, Ryan?
At this point, I don't have an answer on what he's done so far this week. I was interested in seeing sort of whether he would be ramping things up on the practice field this week. Have not heard anything one way or the other. My guess is I'll say right now there's a better than 50-50 chance we don't see him this season now that Tennessee has lost. I think that does play into the calculus at least a little bit with some of the people around Jermod McCoy maybe. So I'll say that my guess is there's at least a pretty decent chance that he sits out, but he's been working toward coming back. So, we'll kind of find out this week. I think this week will tell us. If he's not back this week, my guess is he goes ahead and just sits out the rest of the season.
From a personal standpoint, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for Jermod McCoy to play this season. Obviously, that stinks from a Tennessee fan perspective, but if you take the fan orange-colored sunglasses off, just looking at Jermod McCoy's personal case to whether or not he should play this season, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to do so.
I've seen people saying he needs to come back and play well to get drafted. I don't think so. He's still getting projected in the first round, and if he shows up and runs a 4.39 or something at the combine, no one's going to care. They're going to have good film to look at from 2024. So I think he's got more to your point, Ben. I think he's got more to lose than to gain probably by coming back and playing these last 3 games. And now you've taken away the incentive of playing for a possible playoff berth down the stretch. So, are you risking that? Are you risking re-injury on top of that and just putting out some bad film just to maybe help yourself, 5 or 10 spots maybe in the draft? I mean, I don't know, a lot more downside to me than potential upside for him.
And when Josh Heupel gave an update last week, there were a lot of comments about, he was never coming back, or this is the worst kept secret. Jamal McCoy has been working to come back and play late this season. That has been true. He's not mailed it in. He's not sitting on the side collecting NIL checks or any of that stuff that's been levied against him. But and we said multiple times, I feel like we talked about this on multiple Thursday podcasts, Ryan, just as long as Tennessee is in, still has something to play for. And that's not to say they don't have anything to play for, but in terms of the college football playoff, they needed to win and continue winning to increase the chances that you could see him later in the season. And they haven't been able to do that. So I think the chances go down. We got 3 questions left, a couple of big picture football program questions. Old Vol74 cuts right to the chase. Does Heupel make any changes on the staff? And do y'all think he should? I will throw in the caveat here that, again, Tennessee has not released, if there have been any signed amendment contract extensions, Tennessee has not released those yet. So everybody on the staff except for Chop, who was promoted in the offseason, Tim Banks, who got a multi-year extension, and then there was another, I think Willie Martinez maybe got a multi-year extension, if I'm remembering correctly. Everybody else is currently officially going into the last few months of their deals. Now, we've seen guys get renewed, but what do you guys think? Ben, we'll start with you. Do you think Heupel makes any changes on the staff, and do you think he should?
Do I think he should? Yes. Do I think he will? No, I don't think that he will. I think that he is too loyal to do so. I also think that he can play the card of it was one down season for the defense after they were really good the last couple of years. And honestly, I think that's a fair thought to have, but you just better make sure that you all make some changes defensively this offseason like you did with the offense last offseason. So I don't see any changes that need to be made on the offensive side of the football. I think if there's a change to be made on the offensive side of the football, it's Josh Heupel giving up play calling duties. And so he can focus more on the CEO. Management. Yes, the CEO aspects of being a head coach, the clock management, game management. I think that would benefit from him. I think that's the change that needs to be made on offense, not necessarily a coaching change, because I think every position on offense except for running back has gotten better, and the running backs haven't been bad, like we talked about earlier. Defensively, you're not going to get rid of Rodney Garner, obviously. William Inge, I have been disappointed. I don't think Jeremiah Thielander and Arion Carter have taken the steps necessary that the Tennessee defense needed them to take. It doesn't feel like they've gotten a whole lot better. And to me, a lot of that is that their eyes continue to be in the wrong places, and they continue to get washed out of plays. And just, I don't know. I just haven't liked what I've seen from the linebackers, but I do like William Inge as a linebackers coach. So is that more personnel than William Inge? Again, I don't think you should make a change with him. I like Willie Martinez. I think he does a good job with the corners, and I think he's been dealt a tough hand this year with Ricky Gibson's injury and Jamal McCoy's injury. Colton Hood's been able to fit in seamlessly, and for was Ty Redmond a 3-star when it was all said and done?
He was.
I mean, he started a 3-star at corner, who has been picked on at times, but also in a way has been able to hold his own given the situation. So I think Willie's done a good job. I feel like Josh Heupel really screwed Willie with the nickel situation and leaving Boo Carter on the team. Boo Carter never should have been on this football team, and I feel like that had a drastic impact on the secondary and the play at nickel, which falls under Willie. But I fought Heupel more for that than I do Willie. So I think the change that would need to be made on the defensive side would be with Tim Banks. And I know fans are frustrated with him. They should be, but it is one season, and I don't think that this one season deserves for him to be fired. I think that the work that he had done previously gives him a little bit of a leash. But again, if he is retained, you better be brainstorming early in the offseason to what needs to be changed, and you better apply those changes like the offense was able to do last offseason. And I know I didn't mention Chop, and I am one who asked Heupel, or I asked Tim Banks on Tuesday about the inconsistency of the pass rush So maybe you could question Chop, but Chop's also one of your better recruiters on a staff that could use a couple of more pure recruiters. So I don't think you do anything with Chop either. I think the big one is Tim Banks and what you do with him. And I feel like he's built up enough grace from the last couple of seasons to where he deserves the opportunity to make some changes, make some adjustments.
I think the answer to this question totally depends on what happens here down the stretch. I think if Tennessee wins out, you're probably not going to see any changes. Certainly not from Josh Heupel's end. Maybe someone gets a chance to move up somewhere and leaves on their own, but I don't see Josh Heupel firing anyone. He's not fired anyone in 5 years at Tennessee. So that would be a surprise to me at this point if that happens. To me, the bigger question is if you kind of bottom out here down the stretch, if you go 7-5, maybe even if you go 8-4, does Danny White want to see some changes at that point? Is there a desire from the top to shake things up a little bit? But we've not seen that to this point. But how much pressure is there if they lose one of these last 3 games? That would be fascinating to me to see how that played out. But obviously Tennessee wants to avoid that scenario very much, and that's why I say these last 3 games are very important. I think you could argue these last 3 games it could end up being pivotal for Josh Heupel's tenure at Tennessee, because it just changes the perception of this entire offseason and the direction of the program going into next year, when obviously Tennessee's schedule gets much, much tougher. So I think the types of questions that would be asked if you go 8-4, 7-5, not the kinds of things you want to be dealing with going into a season like next year, when your schedule is set up to be potentially very hard if things were to go badly next year. So I think it totally depends on what happens these last 3 games.
I'm on record from our podcast last week saying what Ben said too, that the changes I would look at for Tennessee would be Josh Heupel handing it over full-time to a full-time solo play caller, so he can manage games differently and not, so he can be worrying about the clock and situations and stuff like that, as opposed to, okay, it's 3rd to my guy just ran out of bounds for the 2-minute warning. What play am I calling next? That kind of thing. So, and the other one was I would be looking hard at trying to upgrade or freshen ideas at defensive coordinator. I think Tim Banks has gotten a bad rap for what he's done at Tennessee, but this season hasn't been good. And it's easy for me to say change things up, because it's not my money that would be paying a guy to go away 1 year into a 3-year extension where he's making over $2 million a year. That would be a hefty parting gift. But I mean, just watching games on Saturday, you see what Blake Baker did at LSU. His defense was flying around. You saw what DJ Durkin did as Auburn's interim coordinator. I don't know if he was calling the offensive plays. Clearly, Hugh Freeze was sabotaging that offense, but he's obviously done a good job with that defense at Auburn, even though they had a tough day in that game. Jim Knowles was having a great day against Indiana until that last drive. But there's going to be some really high-level, top-notch coordinators out there that you could go get. Again, it would be an expensive move, but and it would be a guarantee to work. I'm sold enough to remember when Bob Shoop was going to put Butch Jones over the top, and that was a bad fit, and it backfired. So, I do think, Ryan, to your point, that how they finish is probably going to dictate what kind of moves are made. And on that note, Boston Vol719 has a question. It says, do you view next year as a bridge year or a competitive year? I think this year most realistic fans saw this as a bridge year and then maybe got excited with the beginning of the year. I would say, and I will pull this from what Lane Kiffin said the other day, there's no such thing as a bridge year anymore. Like you've got to win. Lane Kiffin was talking about, he was asked about these jobs and kind of saying his focus is on the next couple games, because as he put it, you're 3 games away from getting fired. We've seen some programs really shift badly in a bad direction quickly. You look at Florida State after their big season, Penn State, LSU, they were kings of the world after beating Clemson, and then a few weeks later, they're firing Brian Kelly after Texas A&M took over their stadium. So I don't think there is such a thing as a bridge year necessarily. Now, if you're Tennessee and you finish well, you can go to the offseason saying, hey, our roster's pretty good. Let's keep most of our guys and try to patch some holes here and there and make a run at it. But you got to win every year in this day and age. So that would be my answer to that. What do y'all think?
I totally agree with the transfer portal era. There's no patience anymore for down years. There's no need for a 3-year rebuilding job, which makes it totally different from when Derek Dooley and Butch Jones were taking over, and you had to look at it as a long-term project. Even the worst of situations can be dramatically improved in 1 year. So yeah, And not only that, but it's going into year 6 under Josh Heupel. I mean, who wants to hear that year 6 is supposed to be a bridge year? I whatever problems you have, go patch them up in the portal. And if you got some coaching staff changes that need to be made, as we just discussed, go make them and be ready to win next year. Because guess what? Everybody else in the SEC is trying to do the same thing, and you've been in a better position than most teams in the conference the past few years.
Yeah, I agree with what you all have said and what Lane said. It's and I'll hammer home what Callahan said about year 6. If you have been evaluating talent and developing talent the way that you should be, then in year 6 you should have offensive linemen ready to go, defensive linemen ready to go, players to go at every position. And I know quarterback's a little bit more difficult because it can be more of a year by year thing at times, and it's you're passing the torch from one guy to the next. But the way that you have recruited at that position and have been celebrated for recruiting that position and also celebrated for your ability to develop quarterbacks, like George McIntyre should be ready in his second season as well. So it's year 6. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like all the other big boy programs in the country that compete for championships year in and year out, the next year should not be a bridge year. And now, like, I know it's the times make it more difficult because there's so much going on all the time. But on the flip side of that, it's never been easier to supply your roster year in and year out. You have an advantage that coaches didn't used to have in the past, to where if there is a position that you don't feel good about going into a season, you can go make changes to it. You can go add to it. You can shore that position up before you even get to the season because of the transfer portal. So there's no more excuses. If you're doing what you're supposed to by evaluating and developing, and then you're taking advantage of the portal and what it's there for, then there are no more bridge years anymore.
Also, if you're 8-4 or 7-5, you can't have a bridge year next year.
The only time there's bridge years, in my opinion, it goes back to the earlier question, in my opinion, of whether this season will be thought of as what could have been. If you have a Nico type situation, and then the replacement for Nico is Joey Aguilar, who arrives here in late May, those are the only times to where I think it can maybe be a bridge year, is if you have something crazy that happens over the offseason that has a negative impact on your football team.
Yep.
Last question from B Gosnell 151. Can each of you talk about the craziest, most ridiculous thing you've seen with a player based on your previous current focuses? For Ryan, that's recruiting. For me, it's football, basketball, although I don't think I've ever actually covered basketball for 24/7 Sports. And for Ben, it's baseball. I'll stick with football. The two offseason situations that we saw this year with Tennessee football were pretty crazy when you look at, to put it in NFL terms, Tennessee and its franchise quarterback split up. I mean, an NFL team would never do that, but that's what happened at Tennessee. Now, part of that's because of the rules the way they are, but the Nico stuff was crazy in real time, and I think it was probably fitting in hindsight just how circular it was that he was sort of the pioneer of like the big money NIL deal for a top level quarterback, and then he's the first one to kind of have the split up where he gets he leaves the franchise cuts him, however you want to look at it. That happens. And then this Boo Carter situation, I think, is probably gotten more ridiculous as the season's gone on, frankly. And I don't know if we said this at the time, but I did feel like at the time that Tennessee should have just cut bait before the season started. And I think that's been validated to have been a decision that Tennessee should have made. What do you guys got, Ryan? You probably have some crazy stories. Recruiting. Jonathan Kongbo comes to mind. Before I got into this business, Bryce Brown was an all-timer for me. So what do you got?
Yeah, I don't know. There's probably something I'm forgetting here. I mean, there's stuff on a yearly basis that you, and some of this stuff plays out behind the scenes, and not everybody gets to be privy to it, and the moratorium isn't necessarily lifted with time. But you do have there are plenty of things. I mean, honestly, some of the stuff in the notice of allegations of what happened with the Jeremy Pruitt staff at Tennessee could certainly qualify for a lot of that. Just some of the things that were going on, and dead period recruiting visits and all that stuff. I mean, some of that stuff just got pretty wild. Obviously the Jonathan Kongbo recruitment, if you want to talk about an individual player's recruitment, that certainly comes to mind. A lot of directions you could take this question too, because there's a lot of things in recruiting you see that are just asinine or just wild. Players committing to staffs or trying to commit to a school without talking to the staff, which used to happen on a pretty regular basis. And that hasn't happened a lot in recent years, but you sometimes see that. So stuff like that's kind of crazy. And then, one of the biggest eye rolls for me was there was a player a couple years ago, and I forget who it was. You see top 10s and top 12s and even top 15 sometimes, and you're like, oh, okay, you're not considering more than 5 of these schools, seriously, but whatever. Someone put out a top 20 a couple years ago. That's one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Like, no one in the world is considering 20 schools. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could take that one. But, my immediate thought is some of the facts and the things that happen behind the scenes as much as anything, toward the end of the Jeremy Pruitt era. Just pretty wild what was happening in those times. And now it's a different era now because it's like NFL free agency. You're just cutting deals basically. So it's not quite as wild probably as it used to be back when you had the stories of, bagmen and all that kind of stuff that would come up from time to time.
I think of Lance Thompson talking about Auburn. This is way back in the day. Talking about Auburn being on a recruiting hot streak. And he said, cash and lies was his answer on how Auburn was recruiting well. Ben, what you got?
Well, for me, it was Tony Vitello taking the San Francisco Giants job. That was pretty wild.
History
making, indeed. I did not have that on my bingo card for this all season when the season ended back in June, that Tony was going to leave for a Major League Baseball job. But here we are. The whole Tony Vitello era was just wild to cover. There was nothing behind the scenes and nothing like bad or crazy behind the scenes that didn't make it publicly. Just all of the things that played out publicly with how they emerged as one of the best programs in the country, and first time going to Omaha and how that picked up steam, and the different interactions Tony had with opposing coaches and umpires, and the Notre Dame fiasco, and then coming back the next year and still finding a way to make it to Omaha, and then finally winning a national championship. Just that whole Tony Vitello era was just absolutely nuts, and it all played out publicly. I mean, there were some things here and there behind the scenes, but it was, a player getting in trouble for doing something silly here or there, but nothing major behind the scenes. But it was fun to cover, and it certainly ended in a fitting way. Now that you look back on it, with him taking a Major League Baseball job, and now longtime MLBers are already hating on Tony Vitello. Joe Madden had a quote, I guess it was yesterday, of kind of questioning whether or not people who have been in professional baseball for a long time, if guys even have to earn the roles and the jobs that they get nowadays, and just dismissing Tony because he jumped straight from college. So there's some old heads who don't appreciate the jump that Tony has made, and Tony's already ruffling feathers, and I'm curious to see how many more feathers he ruffles like he did in college baseball. That whole experience was just wild.
I'll round it out by from my basketball days. I didn't cover some of the characters from the Bruce Pearl era. I did cover the end of the Bruce Pearl era. So my first few months on the job at the Chattanooga Times Free Press were the final half season, where Tony Jones is coaching the first 8 SEC games, and Mike Hamilton's going on. John and Jimmy, the day the team's leaving for the NCAA tournament, it's like, I don't know if Bruce is going to be here next year, and just kind of torpedoing that game, and they get housed by Michigan. Me and a few other media are waiting like 45 minutes for Bruce to come out, just try to get one more like word with him. And then that Monday, I guess, after they got back, when they fired everybody, that was a very much a welcome to the Tennessee beat moment for me personally, but also just a crazy time too. So anybody else got anything to add as we wrap?
I would say I'd be remiss if, I'm not sure any of us has seen anything crazier than Shiano Sunday, right? I mean, that's one of the wildest things we'll ever cover, probably. Just I never ever thought I would see the day that a coaching hire was torpedoed by angry fan reaction. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, I see people always are like, "Oh, this coaching search is getting pretty crazy. It's almost the Tennessee 2017 level." And I'm like, "No, it's not. Stop talking."
AD going rogue with a
I mean,
cross-country
yeah,
trip. I mean, that had everything.
yeah, just yeah. The I think it was this John Curry Chad Morris interaction where he's like, "I'm sorry," he had to take a call in the middle of his interview that he may have been doing when he shouldn't have, and saying, "Hey, I might get fired." Like, just and they kind of scuppered Dave Doran too. So just no coaching search is ever going to touch that. So.
Brady Hook all caps text. I mean, there's so much that we still reference to this day. Some of it just in side texts with people or group conversations. I mean, then anybody who's on this beat has some sort of inside joke, probably from something that happened around 2017.
Yeah, that document drop. Like, I remember driving home from a spring practice and like get this email from UT, and it didn't really say what it was. And I'm like, "What is this?" And I kind of go through it, and you're like, "Oh crap, there's a lot of stuff here," and it's just it's just a wild time. And this has been a wild podcast. We appreciate everybody who asked questions on the checkerboard on GoVols247. It's a great time to join the site. We do have some pretty good deals coming up, but Ryan, what's our promo, or if you sign up for the site now, what can you get?
Yeah, 30% off right now for an annual subscription. Definitely take advantage of that right now. And multiple sports going on at one time. Recruiting approaching national, early signing day, basically national signing day here in 3 weeks. So you're getting in on the stretch run. Transfer portal just around the corner. All the coaching craziness that may or may not end up impacting Tennessee in terms of assistant coaches and things like that, at least. So. Plenty of things to keep track of in the next couple months in particular, and we'll have it all covered for you, obviously, along with the stretch run of the season here at GoVols247.
Yeah, Ryan will have recruiting coverage ongoing. Ben will have some fall baseball wrap-up stuff and some basketball coverage as Tennessee takes the floor on Wednesday night against North Florida. We will all have coverage as Tennessee gears up to play New Mexico State on homecoming in their volunteer spirit smoky gray uniforms. Military-inspired uniforms, obviously, with Veterans Day being on Tuesday. So we'll have plenty of coverage throughout the week. We appreciate you guys listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube. However you consume it, we thank you for that. We will talk to you guys here in a few days.